Salvete omnes. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for taking your midterm exams. We will find out the results, I guess, in a few weeks when the National Line exam has corrected all of the exams. In the meantime, we will continue on with the second half of the semester, which is the exciting part, maybe a little daunting at first, where we translate original and unadapted Latin texts. So for our first one, we will actually go to the back of Wheelock, the section called Loci Immutati. And here we have a famous speech by Cicero against Catiline. This should be number 5. I have in this old teacher's edition of the previous version of Wheelock. In the newer version, I think it's the same, though. So, vitriolic denunciation of the leader of a conspiracy against the Roman state. So we'll start with this speech. Because, first of all, we've translated adapted versions of it. So you'll be able to see how this is different, how the language here is in its original form. So this will be a way to see how far we've come. Also, you'll be a little familiar with the subject matter as well from when we did it before. So I think this is a good text to start off with. And then it's very, very quotable. Quousque tandem abutere. People have been carrying banners with those words in protests in modern times. So I think it's a good text to start with. So what we're going to do is today I'm going to show you my method for translating, which I'd like for you to follow this week. So as you translate, I'd like for you to have a Word document. You can also have a notebook open if you prefer pen and paper. And in this document, you're going to have first the section. So let's say Loci Immutati, number 5. Okay, so that's our text. And then on the left, write down any word that you needed to look up. Don't be ashamed if it's almost every word. This is part of learning Latin, especially at the beginning. It's a necessary part where you look up many things so you can make sure you're getting the right translation. Okay, so let's look at the first line here. Quousque tandem abutere Catilina patientia nostra. Okay, quousque tandem abutere Catilina patientia nostra. Okay, so this is Cicero's speech against Catiline. He's accusing him and his conspirators of trying to overthrow Rome in an act of desperation and opportunism. Okay, quousque tandem abutere Catilina patientia nostra. Okay, so we can go about this like we would any sentence. What words do we find familiar? So patientia, that looks like the word patience, and it is. Nostra, this is noster, nostra, nostrum, from our first year, and that's that possessive personal adjective. So our patience. Okay, it's in the ablative, we see with the long A's. Then what's our main verb? Well, here's where it gets tricky. And fortunately, we get a footnote here to help us. So, abutere is really abuteris. Ere is an alternative ending for the second singular in the passive. Okay, so that's all it is. It's Abu Teres. If you go back to actually the chapter where we learned the passive voice, I think chapter 19, this was given as an alternative form. So, here it is in Cicero. So Abu Tere instead of Abu Teres. So it just means you abuse. Okay, and because it's ab plus utor, utor takes the ablative. Okay, so Abu Tere, patiente nostra, you abuse our patience. Okay, you take advantage of our patience. Catiline, okay, vocative voice. Then for the quo usque we have a note. How far? How far, Catiline, do you abuse our patience? Now, before, when we would translate a passage, any words that weren't in our vocab list, we would kind of ignore, right? We would look up the gloss, and then we would forget about them. So that's one big difference here. Here we're going to have to be responsible for every word. And so any word that you had to look up, even the footnote, you should write down. Okay, so I'm now going to this Word document, and I'm going to include usque here. All right, I'm going to also switch the keyboard. Just notice the cursor. I'm going to the bottom right here. If you haven't already, I would recommend installing the Mary keyboard, like so. You can switch between that and English, either by holding left Alt and then hitting Shift, or by going to the bottom right and changing it yourself. If you haven't installed it yet, just type keyboard, edit language and keyboard options, and then add a preferred language. And then scroll down to Mary, and then next, and follow the instructions, and it'll appear in your computer. Okay, so now that I have that, if I hit the tilde key, so this guy, without shift, before a vowel, it'll give me make runs. Okay. So yeah, let's include usque. Oh no, what happened? There you go, usque. Okay, so usque, then I'm going to tab to leave a nice column, so I can have a uniform column all the way down here. And then, give all the information I need. Adverb, how far. As a good technique for managing the information you have in your own list, put the direct translation in quotes. So that would be my advice, because you might include other information for some of the other entries. Okay, so abutor, supposing you forgot that word, let's include it. So my advice is always look up the first principal part of words and get in the habit of finding them. This way, you have, full control of, you have a full perspective of what the verb is doing. What tense is it? What mood, etc. Okay, so let's write here the first principal part, abutor. Okay, and then you can look up in the back of the book the rest of it, abuti, usus. So yeah, if you can, include all the other principal parts as well. You'll find it under utor, I think. I don't think they have abutor, but right, you can just add ab. And then write abuse. And then if you forgot that it takes the ablative, just include that there. Okay? So yeah, supposing you sort of remembered it, but kind of couldn't remember on the spot, include it anyways. Okay? Better safe than sorry. Fill up the page with words. That way, you'll see it every time you study, and it'll become ingrained in your head. Otherwise, you'll kind of just forget about it. and every time you see utor, you'll have to look it up again. Why is there this ablative? So yeah, include everything that you couldn't find. Patientia nostra, I'm going to leave it off of here because it's something, let's say, that I recognize right away. Okay, so I don't have to include that. Catalina, if I recognize the name, I don't have to include that. How about quo? Right? Quo means to where. Okay, so if you forgot that. Okay, to where or whither in kind of older diction. And there you have it. So the beginning of this speech has a lot of rhetorical questions, and it has, some sentences where you need to rely on previous sentences for information. So for homework for Tuesday, why don't you try to make it through this first paragraph here? Okay, so for Tuesday, translate this paragraph, but do not write out the translation. Okay, so this is the other important difference. Previously, I would have you write out your translations and show them to me before class. We're not going to do that anymore. So what I'd like for you to present, for you to, I guess, submit to Microsoft Teams before Tuesday is your vocab sheet. Okay, so include something like this. For nouns, give the principal parts. For verbs, and then give as much information as you need. Okay, so here abuse and then plus ablative. But if there's a note about something tricky grammatically, you can write that out. If it's important for you to remember, if you need a note to remember what tense the word was, you can include that. So abutor, abuti, abusus, abuse. You can say, present tense. Abutere, abutere. Right? Or if you want to remind yourself that abutere is abuteres, you can include that. So abutere equals abuteres. Okay? So this is completely customized to benefit you, whatever you include on the list. So include whatever is useful to you so that if the camera is in front of you and I ask you to translate a sentence, you can have your notes, right, to help you out, and you can do it. Okay, so this is why we're moving away from writing out our translations, because you can always look up a translation anywhere, anyways. It's much more important at this stage to be able to read off the page. So, yeah, again, translate this first paragraph, and as you translate, write out your vocab. Okay, then go once over, and if you have any questions, or in fact, as a requirement, I would say, write a question in the general discussion. So write a question in the general discussion for me to answer. If you have trouble with a certain word, if your translation seems kind of awkward about somewhere, let me know. And yeah, I'll be happy to help. So ask at least one question. If you know everything, then that's great. Just, I guess, write that. But most likely you'll have, I think, some question. So don't be afraid to ask. And yeah, my advice is avoid any translations whatsoever. You can find them very easily. This is a famous speech, Cicero's Fourth Catilinarian speech. You could look it up on Google, but it's not helpful at this stage to do that. So, yeah, translate, ask me any questions, and I'll make another video on Tuesday to go over that. All right, thank you everyone, and stay safe.